going on? What's going on, fantasy owners? Another week is in the books. Week 12 is now behind us, and now we are going in to week 13, and gobble gobble, it's Thanksgiving time. First off, I want to say to all y'all out there, all my subscribers, all you guys who view the videos, happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Have a blessed and a safe one. Enjoy spending time with your families, food, some great meals, watching football, of course. No, just enjoy it, guys. Have a great one. Be safe. Also, if you're doing the early shopping on Black Friday or Black Thursday, in a lot of the retailers' case, mine included, be safe out there. Don't get too crazy. I know people are crazy for their bargains, but don't go too overboard on that. Just be safe out there. Just we don't want you to become a horror story or getting hurt or anything like that in the news. So just be safe. But have a good one, guys. You know where it's at for your advice. You're right here in the right place. The FFSR, the Fantasy Football Stock Report, another week. And now we're really now getting into the nitty-gritty of the end of the season. The playoff push now, really now in full swing for me. Our team now has won 4 in a row. Really now we've locked up a playoff berth now for sure. This time we're 9-3. Hopefully you guys in a similar position. If not, hopefully again you're just going out there and playing spoiler and trying to affect someone else's fantasy season. Also, I want to say on here a big thank you to my best friend, my co-owner, and my good buddy Nate for being on the show last week. You know, it's just a lot of fun when not only him and I get together for anything, but especially when it comes to fantasy football. He really has enjoyed being a part of the team with me, being the co-owner of these past couple of years together. And then we got another friend of ours also on board, so we're full blown gung ho on it, and I'm just so glad that they're a part of it. So I want to thank him for being on last week. Got a lot of views. I didn't really get a whole lot of comments, but I personally couldn't stop watching it. My Nate and Matt, my other friends, spread the word to other guys, and they were watching clips, and so just to get that exposure out there and spreading the word is great. So thank you so much to you both for spreading the word and for Nate being on here last week. Again, if you guys want to see more of him now, the only thing is with Nate, he lives 3 cities away from me. He lives in Monticello. He grew up there, so it's kind of hard for him to get here on a weekly basis. But I would love to have him on more often. I'd love the back and forth banter that we had, the humor that we brought up in some of the jokes. I couldn't stop watching some of them. My blooper last week, if you guys have heard it, the Graham thing, I still have no idea how that happened, but and then the thing with the end with Major Balzage, you know, it just kind of happened. So we just like to flow and roll off each other. So anyway, enough of the thank yous, enough about that. Let's get into what matters this week for you guys, and that's for your fantasy teams to have success in week 13, this Thanksgiving week. Of course, 3 games on Thanksgiving Day coming up on Thursday, and then the rest of the slate, of course, on Sunday and Monday. The bye weeks are done. So fantasy, yes, rejoice. The bye weeks are finally over. We don't have to worry about them anymore. The thing that we have to worry about is, though, there's still some guys that we're going to have to go on the waivers for because a lot of injuries, again, happened to a lot of running backs last week. And some guys, again, continue to not produce well. There's some uncertain situations with certain teams. So a lot to look for in that. So let's get right into it and start, as always we do, with the quarterback position. Top quarterback from last week, Philip Rivers of the Chargers. Another kind of surprising name. Last week it was Big Ben and his big week, and this week Philip Rivers had a huge week against a Kansas City defense that mostly this year has been absolutely outstanding. But, boy, I tell you what, Philip Rivers, the weapons that he has there in San Diego, the fact, you know, he's turning Keenan Allen into a stud. He's got Danny Woodhead. He's got Antonio Gates. You know, he's got Eddie Royal and Vincent Brown, not involved as much, but still, he has these weapons, and Philip Rivers can put up these really good weeks. 27 of 39, 392 yards with 3 scores. Passer rating 127.3, just ridiculous. 33 fantasy points, huge for Phillip Rivers. Obviously, going forward with Rivers, though, you know Rivers is exactly among the elite of the elites. He can have good weeks like this, but other times he lets us down a little bit. This week, he's going up against Cincinnati. That's not exactly an ideal matchup. The Bengals defense has been very tough this year. But, you know, again, if you play in a 2-quarterback league, or if your number one just hasn't panned out for you, or your number one is a really tough matchup, I certainly could see Rivers as being at least a serviceable QB2. I think certainly, you know, if he keeps developing, again, if this rapport with his receiving core, you know, continues to evolve, and they're going to have to throw more because, speaking of an injury, Ryan Matthews has a hamstring injury, and now you wonder what his availability is going to be for this game this week. So I think Rivers is only going to have to throw more in this game, even though Cincinnati's secondary tends to be strong. I think Rivers is going to have to throw. So again, QB2 with upside, I think. I think certainly he could have another good week for you this week. Maybe not 33 points, but certainly double digits is not out of reach, in my opinion, for Phillip Rivers. I think he's only going to get, you know, better if you know, as you know, with this receiving core as things go on. I think he's a great play this week. Tom Brady. You know, something about Tom Brady with when he goes up against Peyton Manning, you know, A, he usually always seems to win, and B, he outplays him every single time, you know, and that game was a great game to watch on Sunday night. You know, Denver raced out to this early 24-0 lead, and I'm watching it going, oh, great. Okay, this one's over. Denver's carving them apart. Here we go. But then all of a sudden, second half comes, and Brady finds his inner Tom Brady, and he remembers, oh, wait, I'm Tom freaking Brady, and he turns it around. I mean, completely turned it around. 34 of 50 for 344 with 3 touchdowns. He did lose a fumble, but once New England got the fumbling and butter off their hands from whatever happened in the locker room, Brady was fantastic. 29 fantasy points. That's what you normally expect from Tom Brady. This week, Brady's got a dream matchup going up against the Houston Texans. Yes, the same Houston Texans that lost to Jacksonville last week. The same Houston Texans that are on a 9-game losing streak, their longest in franchise history. The same Houston Texans that could be on the verge of getting the number 1 pick in the draft. Can you imagine the Houston Texans with a Jameis Winston or a Taj Boyd or a Johnny Manziel? They might not do that. I mean, they already drafted Case Keenum, so I don't think they'll do that. But anyway, yeah. Start your Patriots. I mean, well, maybe except at running back. We'll talk about running backs when we talk about that situation in a minute. But start Tom Brady. Start Danny Amendola. Heck, you might even get away with starting Julian Edelman as a number 3 receiver because of how Edelman had a breakout week with Brady last week. You might even get away with starting him. I'm not sold on Aaron Dobson or Kenbrell Tompkins now. Dobson did absolutely nothing after his breakout week. Donut, goose egg, skadoosh, 0. I mean, absolutely nothing. I didn't even know if Aaron Dobson is even in the game anymore. He played the first half, and then after that, I didn't even see him. I'm thinking, what happened to Aaron frickin' Dobson? What happened to him? He's not even on the field anymore. So Aaron Dobson now is, again, if he doesn't get in, if he's going to do games like that where he freaking disappears and gets overtaken by Kenbrell Tompkins again, I'm not trusting him. I'm not trusting Kenbrell Tompkins. They're not worth owning at this point. To me, they're off the radar. But definitely Brady, Amendola, Edelman, I think all must starts for sure this week. Colin Kaepernick finally had a breakout good week. Colin Kaepernick, we've been waiting for this all year from him, but I said on here that it also helps that they're playing the butter defense. They played the Redskins. They absolutely dominated the Redskins, and Kaepernick looked like the better quarterback, as he should be, as he is, than RG3. 15 of 24, 235, 3 touchdowns, also 9 rushes for 20 yards, 29 fantasy points. This is the Kaepernick that you draft. This is the Kaepernick that you rely on. This is the one that you've been wanting to see all year. And the matchup this week, while on paper it looks good, the only thing I'm concerned about for Cap this week is that Rams pass rush. The Rams defense has looked very strong in recent weeks with that pass rush. And their offense is playing better. You do realize the Rams in their last 2 games have put up 80 points, 38 against the Colts, 42 against the Bears. And while those two aren't outstanding defenses, it still worries me that the Rams are starting to get kind of a what's the word I want to use? Getting this momentum, kind of getting a momentum going, a rhythm going, or kind of the vroom vroom thing going, where they're really starting to play really well. So that worries me a little bit, but I don't think you can sit Colin Kaepernick in this matchup. I still think he's too good to sit. I think you can safely start Colin Kaepernick this week. He might not put up 29 points again, but certainly, again, double digits, maybe even a low-end 20 is realistic for him. I think he will do okay. He's going to get Michael Crabtree back soon. He finds Vernon Davis wide open in the end zone, usually on a weekly basis. He's got Anquan Bolden to throw to. He's got weapons there. Mario Manningham is slowly starting to get more involved, but not fully there yet. But once he gets Crab back, the 49ers are just going to be that better, like Percy Harvin coming back to Seattle. I can only see San Francisco getting stronger. Keep rolling with Mr. Kaepernick. Alex Smith of Kansas City. I thought I had completely written off Alex Smith as a non-starting entity because of the fact that it was just been so inconsistent. He reminded me of Andy Dalton in Cincinnati. He just really, to me, was not a consistent point producer. Well, all of a sudden, Alex Smith is having an Andy Dalton-like buku resurgence these past couple weeks. He had 26 last week. Now, this past week, going up against San Diego, he goes off for 27. 26 of 38 for 294, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. I mean, without the pick, he's got 29. You're putting him with the likes of Brady and Kaepernick. I mean, this is just outstanding to see what Alex Smith has been able to do. Normally, when you think Kansas City offense, what do you think? Jamal Charles. Get candy. I mean, that's what you think. You don't think of Alex Smith as an elite option. But you can't ignore the fact that he's really putting up good points. And by the way, that 26 that he put up, oh, by the way, to start this run, it came against Denver. Who does he play this week? Gee, I don't know. Oh, that's right. He plays the Denver Broncos, who just fell flat on their face and got embarrassed at New England. You don't think this is going to be a shootout game? You don't think this is going to be a slugfest between the 2 top teams in the AFC West? Forget about it. If you are desperate at quarterback, I'm calling him the sleeper of the week. I know that sounds far-fetched considering how hot he has been, but I'm calling Alex Smith the sleeper of the week. If you need if you play in a 2-quarterback league, or if you're hurting at QB, if your number 1 is not panned out, if you had to drop Matt Ryan like I had to do, and if Alex Smith's out there, get Alex Smith. Plug him into your lineup. I seriously think he's going to keep this train rolling, because if he can do 26 against Denver one week, imagine what he can do at home, playing at home against Denver in his environment, coming with a beleaguered team coming off a tough loss. You don't think that's going to be a fun game? I do. Another guy that might be out there on your waiver wire that could potentially have a big week this week. How about Ryan Fitzpatrick down in Tennessee? Again, another guy that I hate to admit it, I was wrong, okay? I was wrong, Ryan. I'm sorry. I was wrong. What more do you want from me? I was wrong. When your main man Jake Locker, man, he went down with that foot injury, man, I wrote your Titans off. I wrote them all off. I wrote your name off. I wrote Chris Johnson's name off. All your receivers off. I wrote them off. I thought y'all were nothing. I thought you guys were absolutely bunk, junk, hunk of stuff. I just wrote y'all off. But you know what now? Man, Ryan, you starting to impress me, man. Look at your numbers, Mac. Look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie, Mac. 30 of 42, 320, 2 touchdowns. You also ran that ball 5 times for 26 yards. Man, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 26 points. And this week, going up against the Colts, Man, the Colts D, man, what's happened to the Colts meat? You talk about the Colts D. Colts D now, man, I'm writing you off. Hunk of junk, hunk, junk, bunk, hunk of stuff, man. You guys are absolute junk. You've been carved up by the Rams and the Cardinals the last 2 weeks. You've given up 38 and 40 points. What the heck? What happened to your rock-solid defense, man? Your rock's being broken into little pieces by the jail guys. Know what I'm saying? You're just being broken in all these tiny pieces. Man, Ryan, man, you're going to carve these guys up, man. You're chiseling away, man. You're chiseling away at what used to be this rock-hard defense that Mr. Pagano got over there, man. It ain't nothing now, man. You pound that ball with Chris Johnson. You throw to your wide receivers. You get Kendall right open. Delaney Walker, your weapons, man. You just pounding away. Ryan Fitzpatrick, much love, much respect. You like that? I don't know how I just came up with that, but hey, Ryan Fitzpatrick, my apologies. Mea culpa, again. I don't know how many times on the show in the past few years I've apologized to Ryan Fitzpatrick because he was so hit or miss in Buffalo, but you know what? I got to admit, in Tennessee, he has done a very nice job filling in for Jake Locker. Again, as Mr. Mob Man said, that the numbers don't lie. The numbers were very good and a great matchup with the Colts this week. Again, if you're in 2 quarterback leagues, if you're hurting it at number 1, Ryan Fitzpatrick is out there. I think he's a nice plug-and-play number 2 for you this week. Great matchup. Carson Palmer is another name to really interestingly watch. The Cardinals don't look now, but very quietly, the Arizona Cardinals are in the playoff race in the NFC. I kid you not. Earlier in the year, I didn't know what to make of the Arizona Cardinals. I really didn't know what kind of team they were going to be. I was really kind of surprised, but I tell you what, Bruce Arians, he deserved that head coaching job in Arizona, and now he has earned it. I mean, he has honestly earned it to go out there to do what they did at home on Sunday and to just, again, completely overwhelm and destroy a Colts team that we thought at the beginning of the year was one of the possible teams to win the AFC. 40-11. I mean, the Cards just completely destroyed them. Carson Palmer, 26 of 37, 314 with 2 touchdowns. And oh, by the way, no picks. And it helps to have weapons. It helps to have weapons. When you've got a dynamic running back like Andre Ellington, although he didn't get a whole lot of work lately, when you've got Larry Fitzgerald, when you've got Michael Floyd who can make ridiculous Madden-like catches. Did you see the sick game that Michael Floyd had? I'm going to say it right here, right now. If Michael Floyd's out there in your league, you need Michael Floyd in your roster because he makes these sick, ridiculous catches that I remember him making at Notre Dame. You need to get Michael Floyd. Andre Roberts. Rob Hausler is getting better at tight end. Carson Palmer is making use of these weapons, and it's only making him better. So, and this week, a great matchup for Carson Palmer, going against an Eagles D that has been beat up at times this year. I love me some Carson Palmer. I don't know how else to say it to you guys, but Arizona offense, and with that defense as good as they are, Arizona is a great play right now for anybody. Carson Palmer, I think, is even maybe I'm going to go out on a limb. It's even a borderline 1-2. And you know what? Since I made Alex Smith the sleeper of the week, I'll put Alex Smith in that same category. I'll put Alex Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Carson Palmer as all borderline 1-2 guys because they have great matchups this week. They're on a roll, and they could be out there in a lot of your leagues. So, again, if you need guys to plug and play, these guys are great matchups. Drew Brees of the Saints, you know he's relied on every single week, but he had 23 points last week. Tough matchup, though, for him against Seattle this week, at Seattle. But come on, you're not sitting Drew Brees. I mean, that's just a given. Yes, it's tough. It's at Seattle, so I don't expect him to have a huge week this week. But you can't afford to sit Drew Brees. You're making your playoff push, or if you have Drew Brees, you're probably winning matchups. You're not sitting Drew Brees. Now, 2 guys next that I want to talk about that I have currently on my team because I had to get rid of Matt Ryan because he was stinking. And I have both these guys on my roster right now. This tells you anything, the strength of my team. I have both these guys on my roster right now. Josh McCown of Chicago, Mike Glennon of Tampa Bay. And some of you might be laughing, but these guys, again, are kind of in the same vein as Alex Smith, Fitzpatrick, Carson Palmer. They have good matchups, and they're taking advantage of them. Josh McCown, again, another guy that has done an outstanding job filling in for an injured quarterback. He's done an outstanding job filling in for the injured Jay Cutler. And you know what? Jay Cutler's already been ruled out for this week. He's not going to start again. He's on a week-to-week basis with that groin and ankle issue, mostly the ankle. But he's not going to play this week either. So Josh McCown will get the start, and you couldn't imagine a better matchup. Going up against Minnesota, a Vikings team that has no defense, really, outside of Jared Allen, that really has no offense outside of Adrian Peterson, although I do have to again say a mea culpa. Christian Ponder is starting to look a little bit better, but not buku. Josh McCown, last week, 36 of 47. He had 47 pass attempts, second most of any quarterback behind Tom Brady, for 352 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick, 22 points. Also had a fumble loss, so a couple turnovers, but apparently anybody in the Chicago offense can be successful, and Josh McCown is showing it. So if you have Josh McCown, I'm starting Josh McCown in my league this week because I don't like Mike Glennon's matchup. Again, if you're hurting at quarterback, Josh McCown, again, I like him as a borderline, again, kind of in that 1-2 with upside vein. I love his matchup this week. I would not start Mike Glennon at Tampa Bay this week. Now, again, Mike Glennon, I mentioned on here, has done a great job filling in at quarterback. With Josh Freeman now gone, Mike Glennon's been the guy. 14 of 21 last week, 247 with 2 touchdowns. Had the highest passer rating, I believe, of any quarterback, 138.4. Sick. 21 fantasy points last week. Glennon has only put up great numbers week after week, but this week, I don't think you can trust Mike Glennon this week. Really tough matchup because he's going to Carolina. The Panthers are legit. And again, I got a comment a couple weeks ago on one of my other videos about a Panthers fan who basically said, "Oh, you weren't sold on Cam Newton against New England? Well, you should probably start watching a Panthers game then." Well, I've watched Panthers games, and I was just basically saying, well, Newton was coming off a week with 5 fantasy points against San Francisco. That's why I wasn't sold on him for that week, because I was worried about the matchup going to New England. Well, Newton proved me wrong that week. The Panthers have proven me wrong all year. Newton and the Panthers are legit. So that's why I'm worried about this matchup with Mike Glennon in Tampa Bay. So I would not say he's a starting option this week. I can only rate Glennon as a desperate number 2, number 3 play. I don't know if you even start Glennon in a 2-quarterback league, just because the fact that the matchup is so tough. They're probably going to have to throw because the running game has been so decimated, and Carolina is strong up front. But I'm just not sold on Mike Glennon. Now, Cam Newton, as I've said, I'm a believer. Great matchup this week. Cam Newton was 19 of 38, 50%, so that's kind of glaring statistic. But for 174, had a touchdown, a pick last week. But again, here's where Cam Newton does a lot of his damage, on the ground. He had 8 carries for 51 yards and a score last week. That's where Newton tends to do a lot of his damage if he can't find strong rapport with his receivers. Great matchup for Newton this week against Tampa Bay. We know the Tampa Bay defense has not exactly been strong. Darrelle Revis, yeah, he's back there, but he's not the elite corner he once was. Cam Newton, I'm going to say it. I'm sold on. I'm a believer now. Cha-ching. I buy him now. Must start this week against Tampa Bay. Matthew Stafford of Detroit. You don't need me to tell you to start Matthew Stafford, especially against Green Bay this week, especially against a Green Bay team that's starting a 4th-string quarterback on a Thanksgiving day. Now, there's a statistic that I read that's really glaring. The Lions have lost 8 straight Thanksgiving Day games. I wish that was a typo. I really do. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Lions. I had a Lion theme name last year. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Lions. But I read that and I was stunned. They've lost 8 straight Thanksgiving Day games. Thanksgiving Day game is a Lions tradition. They make Thanksgiving Day kind of like their Super Bowl, really. And you're telling me they've lost 8 straight? if they lose to Green Bay on Thursday with a fourth-string quarterback against Matt Flynn, wow, that'd be stunning for me. Detroit's a playoff team right now at 6-5. If that tells you anything about the year Detroit has had. But Matthew Stafford, you don't need me to tell you to start him. He puts up buku numbers on a weekly basis. He's got Megatron. Joik Bell working out of the backfield, Reggie Bush out of the backfield. He's got Nate Burleson back healthy. Nate Burleson, a guy you need to watch going forward. So Brandon Pettigrew getting involved. So Stafford's only going to get better. You can roll with him. Big Ben, keep rolling with him. 22 of 34, 217, 2 touchdowns, 20 points. He's going up against Baltimore, but again, I haven't been sold on the Baltimore defense this season at all. I like Big Ben this week as well. Tough matchup, I think, for Ryan Tannehill this week, going up against the Jets. Yeah, Tannehill was 28 of 42, 310, had the touchdown, but also had a pick, 4 rushes for 36. I'm just not sold on Tannehill. I've never really have been. That Miami's just got a lot of issues, of course, as we talked about. The running back situation's a mess. And gosh, I guess I have to eat a little bit of crow this week. I guess Mike Wallace heard me. I guess, I mentioned on here, I screamed at the camera, Mike Wallace sucks balls this year. You guys know I screamed at the camera. And then Mike Wallace goes off and has a buku game again last week. So you're welcome, Mike Wallace. Thanks for hearing me out. Thanks for watching the show. So there's your bulletin board material. But again, moving forward, to me, it's really here I go. I'm going to give him more bulletin board material. To me, it's fluky. It's really freaking fluky. I'm sorry. What has Ryan Tannehill done? Not really nothing. It's Nerf or nothing. I mean, and Ryan Tannehill right now is nothing. Tom Brady and all these guys are Nerf, and here's Ryan Tannehill with nothing. I mean, it's just fluky. I don't like it. Tony Romo, great matchup for him this week. I love him against the Raiders. Tony Romo's looked finally like a star, pun intended, lately. 23 of 38, 234, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He's starting to look like a more solid quarterback. He's really taking this Dallas team and really being a leader in that offense. So, love Tony Romo this week. Start your Giants this week. If Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco can do that to Washington, imagine what Eli Manning and the upstart Giants are going to do this week. Start Eli Manning. Start Andre Brown. Start Victor Cruz. Start these guys. Maybe you might even get away with starting Ruben Randall as a number 3 or a number 4 receiver because Hakeem Nicks likely won't play. He's had the injury issues. Start Ruben Randall. He might catch a touchdown. He's been a touchdown machine this season. So definitely start the Giants DST. Your Giants this week are going to be golden for you if you have Giants on your roster. Obviously, Peyton Manning. Yeah, he only had 16 fantasy points this week, but you know what? It's Peyton Manning. Cold weather. You knew it wasn't going to be an elite week for him. You knew it was going to be a struggle. But going up against KC, where he played well last time, you keep rolling with Peyton Manning. Now, what do we do with Matt Flynn? He's getting the chance now to start in Green Bay. Although at least that's what I hope would happen. Mike McCarthy has said that there's a slim to none chance that Aaron Rodgers plays. So the answer to Aaron Rodgers playing is no. We know that Aaron Rodgers is probably not going to play. The collarbone's still an issue, not fully recovered yet. So now the question in Green Bay is who's going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Scott Tolzien? Is it going to be Matt Flynn? Well, as I thought, when they picked up Matt Flynn, I thought he'd be the starter right away. Inexplicably, they still started Tolzien. Last week, Tolzien gets pulled from the game, gets benched for Matt Flynn. All Matt Flynn does is go 21 of 36 for 218 with a touchdown, 16 fantasy points, if anybody picked him up. So if it were me, you know what Matt Flynn is capable of. You see what he's capable of. Heck, do you remember when Matt Flynn had that buku game, when the Packers rested Aaron Rodgers and they played Matt Flynn and he had that buku week with setting all those Packers franchise records? Guess who Green Bay was playing? Oh, that's right, the Detroit Lions. It's to me a no-brainer. I think you start Matt Flynn if you're the Green Bay Packers. Now, is he a starting option in fantasy? You'll want to monitor it. You'll want to see what McCarthy says as the week goes on. Now, I'm sure they'll have to name a starter at some point before Thursday because they play Thursday, unless they make it some big-time hush-hush secret until the last-minute reports come on the Thursday night special. Such and such now we have with the official confirmation, such and such is starting. So I don't know. Maybe you want to avoid it entirely. Maybe you don't want to buy in on one of these guys because it's so uncertain. If it were me, I'd pick Matt Flynn in a heartbeat. So I'm leaning toward Flynn to be the guy. But for fantasy purposes, I'd avoid it entirely. Andrew Luck. What do you do with the Colts offense? I mean, they've just been a complete former shell of themselves, what they were earlier in the year. Obviously, losing Reggie Wayne hurts that, but they can't get a running game going. Their best receiving option is T.Y. Hilton. DHB is a drops machine. Now, Kobe Fleener is looking really good. He's getting involved. And these other guys behind him, guys you've never heard of, like Griff Whalen and Levon Brazil and Justice Cunningham, that's all Andrew Luck's got. These guys, unfortunately, do not make Andrew Luck better. Luck was only 20 of 39 for 163 last week, touchdown and a pick, 2 rushes for 31. And going up against that Tennessee defense, I'm sorry, I can't say that Andrew Luck is a starting option this week. In fact, I think he's a bust alert this week. I really am worried about the Colts skill players moving forward. It's clear now that the loss of Reggie Wayne is having an impact on this team. We're now seeing that this, I hate to put it this way, new Colts team without Reggie Wayne there. It's very tough to see this as a Colts fan, but I'm really worried about Luck's fantasy potential along with the rest of the Colts skill players moving forward. So I can't say he's a must-start this week against Tennessee. I can only rate him as more of a QB2 because of the tough matchup. Not a must-start. Christian Ponder. Again, Christian freaking Ponder. Even though the matchup on paper looks good against Chicago, can't trust him. I just can't trust him. I don't trust Joe Flacco against Pittsburgh either. He doesn't get to play the New York Jets every single week. Sorry, Ravens fans. It doesn't happen that often. Not sold him against the Steelers defense. Kellen Clemens of the Rams. Yeah, like I said, I've been impressed by how the Rams have played of late. The thing of it is, Clemens doesn't have to do very much because his running game does well, his defense does well, and Tavon Austin keeps making these buku-like plays. Kellen Clemens doesn't have to do very much. 10 of 22, 167 and a touchdown, and now you're going up against San Francisco at San Francisco. Forget about it. I don't like Kellen Clemens. The quarterback situation in Oakland, a very muddled one. I found out finally what Terrell Pryor's injury was. Apparently it's a knee issue, so that's why Terrell Pryor's not playing. I think Oakland misses him to death, though. Matt McGloin, to me, is not a serviceable option. 19 of 32 for 260. He did have a score, but he also had a pick last week. It's only 14 fantasy points. Even though they're playing Dallas this week, I'm not sold on McGloin. After that, again, big drop-off. You're not counting on these guys. In Cleveland, they're turning back to 30-year-old Brandon Weeden. I saw the highlights last week at times. Oh, by the way, he is 30, and he's playing like he's 30. Brandon Weeden, Matt Ryan, again, Scott Tolzien, avoid these guys. Chad Henne, Geno Smith, no. Now, RG3 only had 5 fantasy points last week, but again, at this point, if you're relying on RG3 as your main guy, you're having a struggling year. RG3 has just not been the same quarterback, clearly, that he was. Again, maybe the knee injury has something to do with that, or the fact that just Washington's struggling so much. You can clearly see that RG3 is frustrated, obviously. Don't like him against that tough Giants D this week. And Case Keenum, no, not against the Patriots, even though Manning just carved them up. Keenum, 18 of 34, 169, no touchdowns this week, had a pick. Again, Houston is just a grease fire right now, so bad. Again, only if you're desperate, but I don't think Case Keenum's a worthy starting option this week. All right, moving on now to the running backs. A lot to talk about with the running backs this week because our top running back from the week may not even play this week. We're talking, of course, about Sean Moreno of Denver. Moreno last week, now clearly we know in Denver he's been the guy all year. He's been the main scoring weapon. He's got the bulk of the work. 37 carries, 224 yards, and a touchdown last week. 28 fantasy points, so top the league. But then we heard the report after the game that Moreno was in a walking boot. We then hear it's a bruised ankle. That's what we hear. So there's a lot of uncertainty about Moreno's status going into this week. If Moreno were to miss the game, obviously Monty Ball looks like to be the big beneficiary of the work in Denver. Now Ball has had some fumbling issues this year, but he also scored 2 touchdowns when the Broncos last played Kansas City. So it's kind of a high risk, high reward if you want to take the chance on Monty Ball. With me, I made the big mistake in drafting Monty Ball, and he never really got playing time, so that's why I had to let him go. But I don't know. It's just something worth monitoring. Let's see if we have any updated information here. He's day to day. He's day to day with a bruised ankle, so we don't know for sure yet what his status is going to be. So monitor throughout the week. But if watch the other practices. If he doesn't play Monty Ball, then it's definitely worth picking up. I'd say is more of a number 3 or a flex. I don't think he's a must-start option. Because, again, we've never seen Monty Ball handle the full load of a full game, so we don't know what to expect from him. So I just really temper expectations on him if Moreno does not play. So monitor that all week. That's one of the big injuries at running back. Guys, you don't need to worry about Jamal Charles at Kansas City. 27 points last week. Going up against Denver this week. You don't need me to tell you not to play Jamal Charles. You're going to keep rolling with him. Eddie Lacy at Green Bay. Big week for him last week. Of course, he's been the guy in Green Bay most of the year when he hasn't been injured. But 25 carries, 110 yards, had a score last week. Also caught 6 passes for 48 yards. So they're getting Lacy involved in the passing game, which is nice to see. But now there was a report that I read online that Lacy may have a rib issue. It's not sure. They're not sure if that's a worryful thing going forward. Okay, actually he didn't leave because of a rib injury. He left because of asthma. Okay, so it's an asthma condition that knocked him out of the overtime game against Minnesota. And Lacy even said, quote, "It's not a concern. I have flare-ups when it's colder. It's not an everyday thing. It's random pretty much." Okay, so not a concern there according to Eddie Lacy. So hearing it straight from the running back's mouth, I'd say you can safely play Eddie Lacy, even though the matchup, tough against that Detroit defense on a short week on a Thursday. I still think you can keep rolling with Eddie Lacy as a strong, fine RB2 play. Same with Maurice Jones-Drew. Again, pretty much really the only offensive weapon in Jacksonville at this point. 14 carries on 84 yards, but had a touchdown. And also, again, they're getting MJD involved in the passing game. Caught all 6 of Chad Henne's targets for 60 yards. So nice to see that from MJD for that part of his game. 20 fantasy points last week. So, again, if you're getting solid numbers like that from MJD, now, again, the matchup, tough this week against that Cleveland defense. The Browns D has been very strong all year, but again, I really can't see any harm in starting MJD as a number 2. They're going to have to run the ball because that Cleveland secondary with Joe Hayden, I don't even know who Joe Hayden's going to be covering. Maybe Cecil Shorts, but I don't know who. But other than that, it's the only receiver they have now, thanks to Justin Blackman's stupidity. So it's. So again, I can only rate MJD a number 2, maybe even high end number 3. It's hard to make him a must start. You probably can't afford to sit MJD, but maybe not a must start just based on the tough matchup. Adrian Peterson, don't need to tell you to sit him. 32 carries, 146 yards with a touchdown. He did lose a fumble last week, so that dropped him from really high number territory to only 18 points. Now, the concern with Peterson is that groin issue. It's been nagging him of late, but last week showed no signs of it. So right now it looks like you keep rolling with AP. Great matchup for him this week going against the Chicago defense that has been not the same as it has been in years past. So keep rolling with AP. Danny Woodhead. Danny Woodhead of San Diego, I got to say, has probably been my best waiver wire pickup of the year. I picked Danny Woodhead off waivers back in week 4. I've been starting him every single week since, and all the guy does is produce. Now, he doesn't put up ridiculous numbers, but I tell you what, he finds a way to get into the end zone. Danny Woodhead, only 6 carries for 25 yards this week, but had a rushing touchdown. Caught all 4 of his targets for 45 yards and another touchdown. 18 points. The guy is just locked as a strong offensive weapon in that Charger system. And now, potentially with Ryan Matthews, if he misses time with this hamstring injury, Danny Woodhead's value is going to go through the roof. Danny Woodhead, tough matchup again this week with that Cincinnati team. But since Philip Rivers, I don't think, he might not be able to throw deep. But again, these dink and dunks to Woodhead that seem to work a lot, that could really be beneficial this week. I'm starting DW, maybe even my league this week. See, the thing with me is now, I got 3 good running backs. I got Marshawn Lynch, I got Danny Woodhead, and I got Andre Brown. Obviously, Lynch I'm starting, but really, who do I start as my second? Because both those guys are so good. But I'm probably leaning Brown because the better matchup, because he's playing Washington this week, so I'll probably lean him. But DW is a great guy to have in those tight situations for me. So I love Danny Woodhead. I love these dual threat running backs. For the rest of you that have DW, again, a solid RB2 or definitely a flex play if you play a flex spot in your league. You can keep rolling with Danny Woodhead. Now, a guy that's going to get a lot of work now for the Rams, for this newfound Rams offense, is Benny Cunningham in St. Louis. Zach Stacy of St. Louis was going on strong. He had 12 carries for 87 yards and a score last week, also caught a pass for 10 yards, 15 fantasy points. However, he left the game against Chicago with a concussion. Usually it takes a while for players to come back from the new concussion protocol. They usually miss at least 1 game, maybe 2. So that means that in all likelihood, I personally don't expect Stacy to play this week. So Benny Cunningham is going to come right in and be the lead back in St. Louis. And he filled in very nicely in Zach Stacy's absence. 13 carries, 109 yards, had a touchdown of his own. So even in filling in for Zach Stacy, he outscored Zach Stacy. I mean, I know, surprising, right? The only qualm I have, though, with Benny Cunningham is, of course, the matchup. The Rams play San Francisco. Tough matchup. So I really can only rate Cunningham as an RB3 or a flex at best. I can't consider him a must-start this week just because of the fact that it's just a tough matchup going up against that 49ers defense. So very tough for Benny Cunningham. Not fully sold on him this week. But if you're desperate at running back and need some depth, maybe he's a guy you plug in, but not fully sold on him. As I said, start your Giants. Andre Brown continues to be the lead guy. 21 carries for 127 yards last week. Also caught 4 passes for 11 yards. Also had a 2-point conversion last week, so 15 fantasy points for Andre Brown. The only concern with Brown owners, like me, is that Brandon Jacobs is there to try to vulture touchdowns away, but hopefully that happens less often than not. Keep rolling with Andre Brown. Steven Jackson, boy, Atlanta at this point, hard to trust Atlanta players, but Steven Jackson, he is the main running back there. 16 carries, 63 yards, had a touchdown, also caught 3 passes for 16 yards. He does have a nice matchup against Buffalo this week, so again, if you're in a pinch at running back, if you need, a number 2 or a flex, I think that's where I have to put Steven Jackson. He's no longer a must-start option, but maybe just based on this matchup, you can plug him in if you're hurting at running back. I'm just worried about Atlanta's players going forward because they've been so bad of late. Rashad Mendenhall of Arizona. I thought for sure that Bruce Arians would see the light and realize that Andre Ellington would be the better option in Arizona going forward. They were giving him a lot of the passing downs. They were giving him a lot of the work. Mendenhall was hurt and wasn't performing well. Now all of a sudden, they're turning back to Rashad Mendenhall. And apparently, he's going to be the guy. Apparently, Bruce Arians is not sold on Andre Ellington. Mendenhall had 13 carries for 54 yards and a touchdown last week. Also caught a pass for 24 yards. Going up against the Eagles this week, I like the matchup. I like Mendenhall as an RB2 this week. I think he can be a starting option for you this week. Don't like Pierre Thomas of the Saints this week. Again, that tough matchup with Seattle. Yeah, Thomas had 10 carries for 73 yards, also caught 5 passes for 57. So he is getting involved in the passing game, but that's a tough matchup going up against Seattle, at Seattle, 12th man. Maybe you use Thomas. I can only rate him as more of a flex. I don't consider him a must start. That's really the only way I can rate him. Again, Ryan Matthews, he did have 12 points, but the hamstring is a concern. You want to monitor that, but if he doesn't play, obviously you want to leave him on your bench. DeMarco Murray of Dallas, keep rolling with him. 14 carries, 86 yards, also caught 3 passes for 40 yards last week. As long as DeMarco Murray is healthy, he needs to be in your fantasy lineup. He puts up numbers on a consistent basis. Great matchup with Oakland this week. Now, the running back situation in New England. This is where things once again get really crazy. Stevan Ridley might not be the guy this week because he fumbled again last week. He's had fumble issues all year. He has 4 fumbles this year. That's most for running backs in the NFL. You know Bill Belichick frowns mightily upon fumbling. Now, Garrett Blount also had a fumble last week, so then he got the heave-ho. So now Brandon Bolden comes in, and now he's the guy with Shane Vereen. They have a great matchup this week against Houston. I think Bolden could be a borderline RB2 starting option this week. If he is the guy, not saying he will be yet, but I think he certainly, could be. Once you're in Bill Belichick's doghouse, it's hard to get out of it. So Bolden, I think, could be a very serviceable play this week for you. And again, I think Vereen is kind of in the same vein. The brevity, the bravado of Shane Vereen, I got to say, I admire. He's playing with a cast on his wrist, and after that wrist injury, but he's still playing very strong. I say Vereen is definitely worth a look as a number 2 or a flex. I'd say Bolden is, again, kind of that same vein because of the good matchup for you. So I think either guy could actually be a good play for you. Same thing with Oakland, the Oakland running back situation. Now, obviously, with Darren McFadden still out, you got Rashad Jennings, you got Marcel Reese. Jennings is the main running back bulk of the work. 16 carries, 73 yards. Also had 4 catches for 49 yards, 11 fantasy points. But Marcel Reese, only 5 carries for 14 yards, but caught 4 passes for 44 yards and a touchdown. 11 fantasy points. So, he had the same number of fantasy points. What do we do with this situation and going up against Dallas? Well, I still think Rashard Jennings is the back to play. He's going to get the bulk of the work with McFadden out. Reese isn't going to get involved on every play, so that's my concern with him. So if you're desperate, again, at flex, maybe you look at Reese as a flex play, but that's the only thing I can rate him. Jennings, number 2, number 3 running back this week, just because of the tough matchup against Dallas. Le'Veon Bell of Pittsburgh. Again, more of an RB2 this week going up against Baltimore. 23 carries on 80 yards, 2 catches for 18. To me, Le'Veon Bell is just not explosive enough. He's just not an explosive enough back for my taste, so I can only rate him as an RB2. Now in Chicago, the running back situation is also now very dicey. Matt Forte tweaked his knee up last week for Chicago. He did have 16 carries on 77 yards and also 7 catches for 40 yards, but also lost a fumble. But that knee is now an issue. Obviously, for Matt Forte owners, this is a tough pill to swallow because the Bears have a dream matchup this week against Minnesota. So this is tough for them to stomach. But, it's something else, again, you want to monitor throughout the week. If Forte plays, obviously a must start. If Michael Bush is the guy, I think, again, could be a sneaky Starting number 2, number 3 are a great flex option for you this week going up against that Vikings team. Then further on down the list, Reggie Bush. I think you can keep going with him against Green Bay. Toby Gerhart of Minnesota. He had 9 points last week. He had 8 carries on 91 yards. So he's been playing when Peterson's been kind of banged up. Gerhart has been getting some attention, but as long as Peterson plays well, I don't think he'll be a great. Obviously, if you're a Peterson owner, you want to keep Gerhart as a handcuff, but not a big-time play every week. Dennis Johnson of Houston, there's an interesting name to watch. He actually been getting more involved with Ben Tate's status really up in the air. You realize Ben Tate's been playing through 4 cracked ribs, and I mentioned last week how much I admired that. But Dennis Johnson has been getting a lot involved now. They put Johnson in last week after Tate was struggling, and Johnson did really well. 13 carries on 74 yards, also 2 catches for 13. But again, with the way the Texans have been struggling, I can only rate Johnson as more of an RB3 or a flex. Start Chris Johnson this week. He always seems to carve up the Colts. So start Chris Johnson this week. And these guys at this point, again, we're talking number 3s or flexes like Brandon Jacobs, Michael Bush, Andre Ellington. Now, Bilal Powell of the Jets, he could be a guy this week that could be, again, a sleeper plug-and-play because Chris Ivory of the Jets got hurt last week. All signs are pointing to Ivory not playing this week. If he doesn't play, Powell gets a dream matchup against Miami, a defense that has been carved up this year. Powell has shown at times this year that he can be a star running back. So again, if Ivory's out and Powell's the guy, I think a sneaky RB2 or flex start this week for Bilal Powell. I really see him with a strong matchup. Alfred Morris of the Redskins, 14 carries on only 52 yards last week, and a tough matchup this week against the Giants. Not sold on him. And the Carolina running backs, not sold on them either. Okay, moving on now to the wide receivers. Wide receivers last week, top guy, no surprise on this name on the list, Josh Gordon of Cleveland. If you own Josh Gordon, what's amazing is Josh Gordon has been good no matter who his quarterback is. Whether it's Brandon Weeden, Brian Hoyer, or Jason Campbell, Josh Gordon puts up buku fantasy numbers. 14 catches, 237 yards, had a touchdown last week, 29 fantasy points. Dream matchup this week going up against Jacksonville. No matter, Brandon Weeden's probably going to be quarterback again this week for Cleveland, and that's a scary thought. But no matter who the quarterback is, they find a way to get the ball to Josh Gordon and Jordan Cameron. Josh Gordon, you can keep rolling with him. Julian Edelman in New England, 23 fantasy points. As I said, with the matchup this week against Houston, I think you can get away with Edelman as a number 3 receiver, or even with certainly with upside. I think he's going to get continued work from Tom Brady, along with Danny Amendola. Like I said, not sold on Dobson or Tompkins. Tyquan Underwood of Tampa Bay had a breakout game last week. The problem is, again, not targeted enough by Mike Glennon. Only targeted 5 times, 3 catches, 108 yards. Yes, he had 2 touchdowns, but that's not going to happen on a weekly basis. Vincent Jackson is the main guy in Tampa Bay there. I wouldn't rush to pick up Tyquan Underwood if you do. You're just chasing touchdowns, so not sold on him. Obviously, Anquan Bolden, I think he's now become a must-start option every single week. Colin Kaepernick is finding him the ball. 5 catches, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Keep rolling with him. I made my apology to Mike Wallace. He was targeted 11 times, had 5 catches for 127 and a touchdown, 18 points. Again, though, fluky. I just don't know what to make of him. That's the thing. And now he's going up against the Jets this week. That's a tough matchup. So is Mike Wallace a must start? No. Desperate wide receiver 3 or flex at best is all I can say because, again, he's just been so fluky this year. Next few guys on this list at this point should be must starts in your lineups. I'm talking Larry Fitzgerald, great matchup. Brandon Marshall, dream matchup. Kendall Wright, awesome matchup. These guys have put up buku points weekly for you. They should be in your lineups this week. Jacoby Jones of Baltimore. The problem with Jacoby Jones is, again, he's not targeted enough. But I think maybe maybe a desperate number wide receiver 3 play if you're hurting. He had 4 catches for 103 yards and a score last week, 16 fantasy points. Tough matchup with Pittsburgh, though, but maybe Pittsburgh will focus more on Torrey Smith, so that'll leave the door open for Jacoby Jones to get plays. So again, I have to look at him as a wide receiver 3. Justin Hunter of Tennessee. This is a sick stat from last week. Caught all 6 of his targets, 109 yards and a touchdown last week, 16 points. I think you can get away with Justin Hunter as a wide receiver 3 this week, along with Kendall Wright. I think these guys could be solid options against a Colts defense that's been decimated of late. Antonio Brown, he's a must start. Donnie Avery of Kansas City, again, I'm worried about him because he's not targeted enough. Only 4 catches for 91 yards. Yes, he had a score. But maybe with Alex Smith getting better, you can get away with him as number 3 or a flex, but I'm not really fully sold on him as a must-start. Tavon Austin. I hate to say it, but I think it's time to buy a little bit on Tavon Austin. Just a little bit. Not fully, but a little bit. The guy just does nothing but make sick plays. And he had a rushing touchdown for 65 yards last week. And, oh, by the way, also caught 2 balls for 39 yards. So that's 15 fantasy points. Again, the only thing that worries me about Tavon Austin is the tough matchup with San Francisco this week. So I can only rate him as a wide receiver 3. But if you're getting that kind of production out of a wide receiver 3, you should be happy. So Tavon Austin, I'm buying in a little bit. Little by little, the more explosive plays he makes, I'm buying more and more in Tavon Austin. Nate Burleson of Detroit. Love this guy. Got him off waivers when he was close to coming back. Last week, first game back from that broken arm, 7 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown. Solid wide receiver 3 going forward. Keenan Allen of San Diego, you can start him. He's Phillip Rivers' top option outside of Antonio Gates. Jarrett Boykin of Green Bay. He's done well no matter who's been quarterback at Green Bay. 5 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. I think you can keep rolling with him. Obviously, Calvin Johnson, don't need to tell you twice about him. 11 points, 7 catches for 115 yards. Emmanuel Sanders of Pittsburgh had 11 points last week, 6 catches, 52 yards, and a score. Again, could be a number 3 wide receiver for you this week. Dwayne Bowe has had a rough go of it this year, but he also had a touchdown last week. So again, I can only rate Bowe as a number 2, number 3 option. And guys like Demaryius Thomas, I mentioned Michael Floyd. Got to get Michael Floyd in your lineups. He's going to be a strong option moving forward for you. The Arizona offense is getting better and better. Des Bryant. Eddie Royal is out there in my league. He's not really involved enough, though. He's really kind of fallen down the stretch. Yeah, he caught all 4 of his targets for 87 yards, but I think he's more of a desperation wide receiver 4. James Jones of Green Bay. He's starting to get more involved and better, but I think once you get Aaron Rodgers back, he'll only be even more better, if that's even a term. I know it's not, but I think he's going to be better. He had 7 catches for 80 yards last week. And again, after that, big drop-off. Cecil Shorts, tough. Joe Hayden's, I think, going to be on him like a shadow this week. Brian Hartline, not sold on these guys. Rod Streeter. Yes, Rod Streeter's going to be the main guy in Oakland with Denarius Moore out, but can you really rely on him with Matt McGlynn as your quarterback? I can't. Torrey Smith, Palomalu's going to be all over him this week. That's a tough matchup. Harry Douglas of Atlanta, again, more of a wide receiver 3 at this point with Matt Ryan struggling. Steve Smith of Carolina, again, more of a wide receiver 2, 3, had 6 points last week. Ruben Randall, I think you can start Ruben Randall as a wide receiver 3 this week. Vincent Jackson, again, tough matchup with Carolina this week, so I can't really say that Jackson is an elite wide receiver 1 this week as he normally is, maybe more of a wide receiver 2, but he's the main weapon for Mike Glennon to throw to. And after that, again, big drop-off. These guys really not so long. Jordy Nelson had a rough go last week. Only 4 catches on 58 yards, but I still think he's going to be okay. Pierre Garçon, 8 catches, only 48 yards, but was targeted 11 times. He's still okay to go. Um, Alshon Jeffrey, he's kind of fallen off of late. He was targeted 8 times, but only 4 catches for 42 yards. I think he preferred Cutler more as his quarterback than McCown. So I can't call Jeffrey a must start. More of a wide receiver 3. Andre Johnson only had 2 catches for 36 yards last week. That's certainly surprising. But with Keenum and Houston struggling so much, Johnson's really not an elite option anymore. More of a wide receiver 2-3. Wes Welker only had 4 catches for 31 yards last week, but you're not sitting Wes Welker. T.Y. Hilton only had 5 catches on 38 last week, but he's targeted 9 times. Again, more of a number 2, number 3. After that, no real notable names. All right, moving on now to the tight end position. No real surprise at the top. Top tight ends, Jimmy Graham, Rob Gronkowski, Jason Witten. Those 3 you're obviously starting. Ladarius Green of San Diego was the 4th highest tight end last week. 14 fantasy points, 3 catches, 80 yards, and a score. Yeah, surprisingly, someone had more fantasy points than Antonio Gates. Antonio Gates only had 2, 3 catches for 21 yards. Will that mean anything going forward? I doubt it. I don't think you can fully trust Green yet. We'll kind of take a wait-and-see approach on him. Gates is still the main guy. I don't think he really has full-on fantasy relevance unless Gates gets hurt. So don't take a chance on him yet. Jared Cook finally did something for once last week. He finally had a touchdown for being nowhere for most of the season. 4 catches for 80 yards and a score. But again, with a tough matchup against San Francisco, don't know if you can rely on him going forward. Martellus Bennett, I still like him moving forward. Kobe Fleener getting involved. I like him going forward. Vernon Davis, these guys are usually good options for you. Jacob Tamme. Jacob Tamme did a nice job filling in for the injured Julius Thomas. 5 catches, caught all 5 of his targets. 47 yards and a touchdown, 10 fantasy points. If Thomas is still out, I think Tamme could be a solid number 2, at least number 2 option, or a plug-and-play start against Kansas City or as a flex. I really like Jacob Tamme. He developed a nice rapport with Peyton Manning from their days in Indianapolis, so he could be a good option for you. I mentioned Brandon Pettigrew getting involved now in the Detroit offense. Again, more of a tight end 2. He's really, really touchdown dependent, very heavy there. Greg Olsen of Carolina always seems to find the end zone on a week-by-week basis. I can keep rolling with him against Tampa Bay. After that, pretty big drop-off. Although Timothy Wright of Tampa Bay had 8 catches on 9 targets last week for 75 yards. Again, I think more of a tight end 2 or a flex play. Didn't find the end zone, so that was tough. And again, a tough matchup with Carolina. He's not a must start. I mentioned Rob Hausler of Arizona. Had 4 catches for 51 yards last week. I'd love to see this guy getting more involved in the offense. Again, though, not a must start against Philly, but it's a nice matchup if you're looking for a sleeper at tight end. Again, a tight end 2 or a flex. Tony Gonzalez has been struggling of late. Only 4 catches, 43 yards. It's tough to sit TG, but he's not a must start option anymore. Delaney Walker was targeted 9 times last week. Had 5 catches for 46. I think he's a nice sleeper start against the Colts this week. Heath Miller had 5 catches for 41 yards this past week. Again, I think more of a sleeper start. Jordan Cameron targeted 10 times last week, but only 3 catches for 32 yards. I think he'll have a better week this week against Jacksonville. John Carlson in Minnesota, his sleeper chances have died off. Only 3 catches for 36 yards. Never relevant unless he catches touchdowns. He's very much in the same vein as Kyle Rudolph. So not sold on him. Garrett Graham of Houston, 5 catches for 32 yards. Only 3 points. The Houston skill players, not sold on them. I mentioned Antonio Gates. He should still be fine going forward after that drop-off. Real quick, kickers and defenses that I like for this week. Jay Feely of Arizona, 18 fantasy points last week. You don't think he's got with that Arizona offense getting better, he's a strong kicking option? Oh, yeah, I think he's a good option. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put in a claim right now while I'm doing this, because my kicker is Garrett Hartley of the Saints, and I'm not sold on his matchup this week against Seattle. And never mind, because Hartley's still owned in a lot of leagues. Philly's not even owned in a lot of leagues. I think that game could be a shootout, though. So, but if you're hurting at kicker, then Philly could be a guy you're looking at for a potential if you're in a pinch. He's got a good matchup against Philly, and again, that Arizona offense is just going to get better. Other kickers I like this week, obviously Rob Baronis of Tennessee going up against the Colts. I think that's a great matchup there. Oh, bless me. Stephen Gostkowski in New England. You're going to love his point total against Houston. Graham Gano of Carolina going up against Tampa Bay. I like that matchup as well. Phil Dawson of San Francisco going up against St. Louis. Matt Prater of Denver. Denver KC, I think, is going to be high scoring too, so I like Suckup and Prater in that game. Josh Brown of the Giants going up against Washington. Love his matchup. Robbie Gould of Chicago going up against Minnesota. Billy Cundiff of Cleveland going up against Jacksonville. Great matchups for those guys. And finally, DSTs. The top DST last week was the Steelers DST. They had 25 points. Going up against Baltimore this week. That's not a bad matchup, but I don't see a 25-point. I think they have a good week again this week, but I'm not fully sold on that. Other DSTs with good matches this week. You're going to love the 49ers DST again this week, going up against St. Louis. I love them again this week. Cardinals DST going up against Philly. Actually, maybe not bad plug and play would be the Jags DST against Cleveland, only because Brandon Whedon is the quarterback and Cleveland has no running game. So usually you wouldn't use the Jaguars DST, but maybe for a 1 week plug and play, if you're hurting and there's no better defenses out there, you could plug them in. I could see them having a decent week. Cowboys DST against Oakland. Hello, Matt McGloin. That's a good matchup. Dolphins DST against the Jets. Hi, Geno Smith. Jets DST against Miami. Hi, Ryan Tannehill. There's a lot of good ones out here. Obviously, Patriots DST against Houston. Hi, Case Keenum. Hi, team with a 9-game losing streak. Panthers DST, you want to keep rolling with them against Tampa Bay. Titans DST against Indy. Giants DST against Washington. After that, I don't see any other elite. Browns DST against Jacksonville. I'm making a run at them off waivers this week. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, that's it for this week, guys. Again, thank you all so much for the views, the subscribers, everybody for spreading the word. Again, just thanks so much. And again, have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe on Black Friday shopping day, Black Thursday, Friday, whatever it is now. Just be safe out there. And we will see you guys again next week for the recapping Week 13 and looking ahead to Week 14 right here on your home for fantasy advice, the FFSR, the Fantasy Football Stock Report. Thanks, guys.